Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Joint Flows. Today we are joined by James Ski, the CEO and founder of Sales Confidence. How are you, James?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I've been seeing some great work that you've been putting out there on LinkedIn. So excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. We always like to start with a little bit of an introduction into who you are and how you've got to where you are. So floor's yours.
Sure. So I guess a fun story to start with. I personally always wanted to be in sales. Like, I'm not that guy that fell into sales. I literally ran into sales. So I was always thinking about how I would get into sales, because eventually I wanted to have my own company, and obviously I'm building a global company now. But in my early days, one of my first experiences of sales was doing door-to-door, persuading people to get their milk delivered. So as you can imagine, getting your milk delivered in the kind of mid-2000s wasn't really the norm. That was a declining industry. Most people were picking up their milk from Tesco's, Asda, or wherever, superstore, right, on their weekly shop. But we used to go up to people, knock on their doors. We had to do about 100 doors a day. It was commission only, and we had to persuade people that they should get their milk delivered. But one of the funniest stories I ever had in this experience was knocked on this door, and this young lad, must have been 10 years old, opened the door, starts speaking to me, and I thought, okay, I've got a bit of an interaction. And his two parents arrived at the door, and they looked at their son, and their son started doing sign language to the parents. And basically what happened was the son delivered my pitch via sign language to the couple, who ended up signing up and getting their milk delivered. So it didn't happen before. It's never happened since, but I literally persuaded someone through sign language to buy my service, which was pretty cool. But my lessons from that part of my early career were there's no such thing as a no in sales. There's just a not now. No, you didn't pitch me well enough. No, come back later. No, I'm tired. No, I'm interested. But really, there's an always opportunity to overcome the no. And the other thing is, it is a numbers game. Statistically, you've got to put in the work to get a return. So make sure you do the numbers. And that's kind of how I started my career. And then the short version of my journey is I spent 10, 15 years in early stage SaaS companies, as individual contributor, as a leader, built a number of teams. And then I spent 4 years at LinkedIn. And while I was at LinkedIn, my claim to fame, that at one point I was the #1 social seller on LinkedIn at LinkedIn globally. I was literally the #1 guy with a 98 out of 100 social selling index. And I don't talk about it much these days, so I'm giving it in there again. But yeah, I was the #1 guy globally. And then for the last 5 years, I've been building Sales Confidence, which is now a membership subscription for salespeople and sales leaders to help them with their mindset, well-being, and performance, and help them reach the next level in their career.
Amazing. What an introduction. I'm showing my age here a bit, but we used to get our milk delivered when I was a little kid as well. And I remember when we stopped doing it. So it must have been some challenge. So kudos to you for being able to do it
It's amazing that the guy that used to provide the service, he continued doing it for years, because all he used to do was keep signing up people that used to get their milk delivered. So they'd stop getting their milk delivered, and then he'd go back and get them signed up and get his commission. So yeah, funny world.
Amazing. Interesting career that you've had as well. I like the fact that you've spent quite a bit of time in early stage companies, went over to LinkedIn, who's obviously a beast of a company. And now you're doing Sales Confidence as well. Talk about some of the learnings that you've taken from your days in early stage companies and how that was applicable in a bigger unit like LinkedIn.
That's a great question.
We try.
In an early stage business, you have to be very adaptable to change and chaos, because it's changing constantly. So your ability to adapt to a new message, new positioning, how you show up and tell a story, or use a case study, or the pricing changes again in a quarter. Like, you have to be very adaptable. And I think when you show up at a beast like LinkedIn, where there is a lot of proven predictability and success, if you can apply that same adaptability, you end up being a very powerful operator among what I call kind of corporate cookie cutter salespeople who have never worked in a startup, have no ambition to work in a startup, and literally have no appreciation of what it takes to be in an early stage business. And, you know, at the end of the year, accounts get changed, pricing changes, and they freak out. And that just didn't really happen to me because I was always prepared to change and adapt from those kind of early stage businesses. And the other thing is, I think, and you both know it because you've been in the early stages and you're building your business now, is that you have to graft. Like, you know, nothing's given to you when you're in a startup. You literally have to ask, beg, steal for the business to make progress. And again, if you apply that mentality and attitude, you know, into enterprise deals, obviously you have to be a professional about it, but that winning mentality that you can leverage from being in a startup makes you a very effective, you know, enterprise seller. And also I think energy is important. You guys know me, I'm high energy, but you know, when I would show up and meet FTSE 100 executives, they'd be like, whoa, like I need to listen to this guy because he's got something that I need to hear about. And I think, again, you know, overly professionalized corporate salespeople, they just don't bring enough energy or personality to it. So those are the things that I think from an early stage startup probably helped me and gave me an advantage at somewhere like LinkedIn.
Awesome. Nice. I'm really happy to have you here, James. I'm part of the sales confidence community. I'm very grateful to be there as well. You get to meet a lot of founders and maybe like, you know, stage 2, stage 3 kind of founders, Series A, Series B. What is the common attribute that successful founders share versus the less successful ones?
That's a really good question as well.
It's a great question.
So I would say that, you know, those founders that are making progress have a very, very clear vision, and they can communicate that vision with their investors, their customers, their employees, and they lead from the front. Like, people want to show up for them. The ones that aren't making it, they're not very good at communicating those aspects of their vision. And so they're like facing an uphill battle. That's the first thing, having a crystal clear vision and leading from the front. The second is just their ability to execute. So the fact is, like, once you get to that, you know, that next stage from seed, for example, Series A, and you're graduating up the revenue levels and you're doing a couple of million, like, you can execute and find a repeatable process, and you understand as a founder that you need to step away from a lot of the mechanics to empower other people to do the job that you might have been doing 6 months ago, a year ago. And you're almost like having to reinvent yourself every month, every quarter, so that you can up level yourself personally and mentally so that the business grows with you. So that would be my second point, execution. So I've said vision, and then execution. And then the third piece is, you know, I hate to say this, but they can actually sell. Like, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, there's a lot of product-led founders and their investors that are just begging that the product will sell itself. And, you know, we know how popularized product-led growth is these days, and it has been around forever, to be honest, in SaaS. But like, there's this idea that you just don't need salespeople, you don't need sales skills. And to be honest, once you've run out of friends or you've run out of your other founder mates that are buying your product, you haven't got any sales skills.
You're
not going to get anywhere.
That's good. We were lucky not to have any friends to start with, so we went straight to stage 3.
Speak for yourself, Mick. I have some friends. I have some friends. Not many. I've got a handful of friends. None that can buy our tool, however, so it's irrelevant. No, some great points made over there, James. What's the, you know, I always find it interesting, the product-led growth aspect. And, you know, for me, I feel like there's always a tipping point at which, you know, you need to start being a little bit more commercial. You need to get that sales team in and things like this. Where do you think that tipping point is? At what point does a PLG company turn around and say, okay, now's the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question, to be honest, like you've got to be able to demonstrate either two things. One, that once you land a customer with product-led growth, there is opportunity for upsell. So if there is opportunity for upsell, you want a sales professional to manage those relationships and grow the account. That would, for me, be one leading indicator. The second would be if you are going more upmarket, mid-market, and enterprise, where yes, you might be able to get users, but you can't actually do, you know, a deal, i.e. connect the dots where you can do 100K plus. So you might be able to get someone in an enterprise company, product-led growth, a couple of users or a handful of users to spend less than 5K. If you want to turn that into 100K plus, you need to be hiring salespeople.
So the answer, I guess, is more product-led growth, get your foot in the door, and then it's the people skill, the selling skill that allows you to be able to expand that as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
James, you know, we spoke about well-being and confidence and your ability to kind of sustain like such a demanding environment. What do you feel like is the key to unlock that potential when you're a founder or when you're a very driven salesperson?
Yeah, I think it can be very difficult. I do feel there's this delicate balance between like this balance between wanting to achieve rapidly in a kind of a shortened period of time, but also having patience and letting go when you don't hit those milestones. I used to be a very black and white high performer. So what I mean by that, for example, in my sports background, I used to be a high performance rower. And if I didn't win, like my expectation was to get the gold medal. If I didn't get the gold medal, I would literally, I would be in tears. I would just break down. It was just like an instant breakdown. And then when I got into my sales professional, if I didn't hit my target, like it was very kind of dark times because I just felt like I had to achieve that number. If I'm honest, as a founder, that's just not healthy. The fact is, like, you can move your own goalposts. And I do think it's okay to do that to sustain yourself. You just didn't do enough. You just haven't got enough resources right now to hit the milestones that you want to hit. You're just not firing in all cylinders. You've had a setback. You know, for me, COVID was a massive setback in my business. It probably extended my journey by 2 years. And that was very frustrating. But once I detached myself from that and I said, well, actually, I'm on a 20-year journey. So what's 2 years on a 20-year journey? Like, I'm okay with that longer horizon. So I do think there's a balance of like adjusting your milestones and having patience sometimes. I mean, look, it's super frustrating, especially on LinkedIn. You know, every single day there's a flood of valuations, acquisitions, you know, hustle porn. I contribute to it, some of it, I'm sorry. But like, I do feel like you're always playing catch up and you're never near where you want to be. You know, I've got friends that came to the very first sales confidence event in 2017, and they've got $100 million turnover business. They literally were in the event, and I'm sitting here, you know, looking to get to my first million. I'm like, what have I done? So that's life, right? We're all on our journey on a pathway. But sometimes I just think you just have to detach yourself and give yourself a break, to be honest.
Yeah, that's great advice. And is there anything as a founder you think that you do from a routine perspective in regards to like looking after your mental well-being?
A couple of things. I prep my week ahead of the week. So like Sunday for me, afternoon, so like from about 4 o'clock till probably about 8. So what's that, 4 hours? I love that time because there's zero interruptions. I swear in the UK, other than probably other founders, no one does anything. So like there's no disruption, there's no activity, and I can just get my head down and plan my week. So I always feel when I get to Monday, I'm always ahead of myself, always ahead of my competitors. Secondly, like I make time for sleep. Sleep is really important for me. I do get a good 8 hours sleep. And the way I design my week is I kind of what I call front end it. Monday to Wednesday, I might go early till very late, but by Thursday, Friday, I'll wind down, pick up my kids from school on a Friday at 4, and then I'm kind of switched off. And then Saturdays is probably the only day of the week where I just try not to go near email or tech on my phone. So I guess it's a mixture of, remove distractions, pre-plan, get ahead of myself, sleep, and exercise.
That's hard because it requires a lot of discipline as well. Like I feel like I'm quite disciplined, but I'm addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to like the scroll on LinkedIn. I got into LinkedIn only this year, but it's very addictive. How do you teach discipline? How do you learn discipline?
Well, just one thing, though, just to take away, and I'll admit this publicly. I'll give you an example of sometimes when it gets too much for me. There was a day last week after an event. The following day, I was literally exhausted. But as a founder, I feel now empowered that I don't have to show up, even if I'm needed. So I literally cleared my diary. I was staying in the hotel. And I just slept for the rest of the afternoon. No one bothered me. I didn't show up for my meetings. And that sounds like, wow, how can you get away with that? I can do what I want. I'm a founder. And I think sometimes as founders, you just need to realize when you need to take that time out, when you need that break, you must take it, because otherwise it builds up and burnout ensures. So I just think sometimes as founders, like just like when you need it, take the break. But in terms of discipline, I'm very much someone that allocates time for everything I do. So lunchtime, break time, travel time, leisure time, kids time, it's all allocated in my diary. So even flex time. So I guess because of that, I get to my diary, I know exactly what's happening, what I should be doing. And don't get me wrong, I allow for flexibility and interruptions and things that come in there. But generally, I build time allocation for flex in my diary as well. And that allows me to keep discipline.
Yeah. And how important? So
it's time boxing. I think Elon Musk does that as well.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot of similarities.
I hear a lot of people who try to claim to do time boxing, right? So in places I've worked where you can access other people's diaries and you're looking for meetings, everyone has a time block. But what I realize is very few percentage of those people actually maintain those time blocks in a disciplined manner. Like it's there, but they'll easily put something over it. There's no respect towards that actual time block. So well done to you for being disciplined towards it, because it's a lot harder than it looks. Definitely.
Yeah, it comes in time. For me, I've over many years, I've just applied that mentality that I've learned from what parts of the day I want to take sales calls, what parts of the day I want to do administration work, what parts of the day I want to do marketing, for example, and what parts of the day I don't want to do anything. And I try and stick to that.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who structure their day like this, right? So early on, people might have high energy until they're like, right, I want to do my most labor intensive task over here, whereas I'm going to do something that's a little bit more easier in the afternoon. What kind of person are you in terms of how you structure your day?
Yeah, generally it is that I'm most kind of energetic at the beginning of the day. There was a period last year, can't quite put my finger on it, but I was literally working from home a lot, and I was having like a sleep at lunch, like I was having a snooze.
Yeah.
It didn't quite energize me as much as I want. It then meant when I got onto my 2 o'clock calls, I take lunch 1 till 2 typically. That I wasn't that ready, and then it would take me like a second wind. I'd then get another wind at like 4 till 6. So for me, like beginning of the day, I like to kind of crack on with my key priorities.
Yeah. What drove you to start the Sales Confidence membership?
So in essence, one of the great things about building a network over many years is that I've literally connected in person with thousands of salespeople and sales leaders. And also, fortunately, I have a lot of goodwill. Generally, people feel like I've contributed to the industry. I've helped a lot of people. There's a lot of good karma out there. But my events aren't that regular. And a lot of people said to me, James, like, I want to be tapped into something all the time. And the problem is I can go onto Google or YouTube, I'll type in something specific about SaaS or sales or development or mindset, and I'll just go down a rabbit hole. I'll just get lost in Kardashian videos and Mr. Beast videos on YouTube, and then I'm not doing anything about sales. So, what I've tried to design with the membership is that within our platform, it's just specific to those three pillars of mindset, wellbeing, and performance. We get the top sales leaders in the UK to show up and contribute. Those people do it because they want to contribute to the next generation of leaders. And so for me, it was just about giving people like an accelerated learning experience in a very kind of clear, well-packaged benefit. And if nothing else, you only did 1 or 2 sessions a week and no other learning and development or personal development, I feel like you would make some progress in your career.
Yeah. Do you think there's any differences that you're seeing in this type of company versus like a SaaS or a software company that you've previously done?
Yeah, there is. I mean, so in all honesty, when I set up Sales Confidence, the business, which at its core ended up being a networking events business, I did want to have a SaaS product like you guys have created, but I couldn't find anyone that wanted to write any code for me. And I also didn't have much money to invest in that. So that's why I started with events. As the membership and our learning and development content has evolved, what I realized is there's value in being a curator of value, not so a curator, not a creator, and curate experiences and hold spaces for people. That's where there's a lot of a value exchange. And so really, my strongest skills are brand, sales, marketing, and promotion. Like if I had to then think about product as in developing a product, then that would completely hold me back as a single solo founder. So yeah, without a doubt, our process is much easier. It's not complex, not that many stakeholders involved, don't really need to do demos. It's much more emotional, as in, do people feel something about being part of our movement versus is this logically going to add value to our business and we're going to see a return. So you could argue there's more similarities to how we sell our membership to kind of a bit of consumer play rather than B2B, but we do sell it B2B, and we do need to justify now to companies that they can get a return on it.
What so I'm part of that community, and I find it really helpful to be essentially with people like myself from different companies. Like it must be hard to find them to start with. Like who do you target? Do you target a specific demographic? Do you target a specific job title? Like how do you find those people who are self-aware?
Yeah, so this is the reality of one of the challenges we face with. Now, ultimately, we have tens of thousands of sales leaders that have come to our events over the last 5-6 years. So we know a lot of sales leaders in the UK. That's the first point. So we do have access to their data, and that's enriched by the likes of Cognizant. That being said, what we're looking for is those with a growth mindset and going through some kind of transition where they are motivated to put more in, to get more out, to go to the next mile, take the next step in their career. They're going through some kind of transition, or they want to develop their sales team. If you're ticking over or you're going through the status quo, meaning your sales team's hitting target quarter on quarter, you've got 15 years sales leadership experience, you don't really want for more, just carry on what you're doing, frankly. But if you're wanting to get to that next level, whatever that next level is to you, promotion, more growth, more sales, better mindset, they're the people that I find are opting in to what we do. And our job is just to find more of them and build a kind of larger community of those type of people like yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously you mentioned you're a solo founder with Sales Confidence. Was that an intentional move? Do you ever wish?
Yeah, I mean, when you're winning and it's going well and you've got momentum, the ego's like, you don't need anyone. You're riding a wave, right? It's only up and you just feel good about yourself. When you're in the not so good place, the dark place, that is where you wish you have someone in your corner. And I've been in a lot of very difficult spots, personally, professionally, in this business over the last 5+ years. And I do wish I could have turned to someone and be like, look, how are we going to get out of this? How are we going to figure this out? What can we do together to get to the next level? You know, I highly recommend people try and find that co-founder or co-founders. Now, don't get me wrong, when this all plays out, I'm going to do very well out of it. But I've been through a lot of pain to get there. And I just don't think you need to go through that pain. I think I could have gone a lot faster, been a lot smarter, been much more effective if I had, you know, another person by my side that was in it equally with me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm grateful to have Hitesh with me, but if I had been on my own, I think it would be, because you kind of spiral. It becomes really hard to just understand where to go when you're in the dark place. On that question, James, around, you know, there are a lot of founders being burnt by VCs and vice versa. Where, from your experience knowing so many founders, where do you feel like the relationship starts degrading?
I'll probably be a bit controversial with this. I don't know if this is good for my reputation or not, but I've got this far. If I'm honest, like, I really don't appreciate VCs that have no operational business experience. And most VCs do not have any entrepreneurial operational experience of actually building a company or running a company. They're number crunchers. So they lack empathy. They really lack understanding people. They don't know how to sell. They certainly don't know what marketing is. Yet they sit in board meetings informing founders on these strategies when the founder has to figure it out and execute themselves. So I think you know, the VC model is probably you just have to look at the last 18 months, been proven more and more recently that it's going to get disrupted massively, because the idea that you can just get away with signing a check and then walking away and having a portfolio of bets, because let's be honest, like, it's not a difficult job. Like, it's not. Like, you have loads of money and you put little bits of that money into 50+ companies, and one of them or two of them will win and pay off the rest that don't make it. Like, no, that's not that difficult. What is difficult is doing one business at one time and trying to get it to 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, right? So I'm an entrepreneur fan. I'm a founder's fan. I'm a founder's friend. And I'm a founder champion. I'm not the biggest fan of VCs, but they obviously have their place and their merits. And of course, there's different ones out there. You know, I'm a big fan of what, like, Nathan Latker's doing now with Founder Path and debt financing. You know, connect your platform, prove your ARR, don't give up equity. You know, make more money on the long term. Don't give up the pie to VCs. I also believe that building a profitable business, is actually not a bad way to grow a company these days. So, you know, you might not be the next WeWork, but do you want to be the next WeWork? Okay, like, so I do feel like clearly building a profitable business and, you know, holding on to as much of your equity as you can should be what founders think about. I do find it depressing for a lot of founders that are really stuck now, you know, because they raised at an inflated valuation and the business is just not going anywhere according to the VC's modeling. But for them, they've actually built a great business, servicing a customer base, built a culture, but they might not see an upside or an outcome that's good for everyone involved.
Yeah, sustainable growth is so important now. I think more and more people are cottoning on that that's the way to do it. But while we're talking about VCs as well as the check that they cut, what do you think? Because, obviously companies are still, startups are still going to be going to VCs. What do you think the ask should be? What should you be getting in return? You're giving away that equity, you're getting some money, but is there anything else you should be getting out of the VCs?
So despite what I said, I know a few VCs, and I think what the good ones do is they do help plug the founder into a network of experts, subject matter experts, other founders, other resources and tools. So even though the VCs, might not know, they know other experts, right, that can support the founder. So I do think access to other resources outside of the money, because everyone's got the checks to cut. That's they're in the business to do that. So what's your value add? And then everyone talks about value add as well. But genuinely, I think if you are adding value and expertise, then that's what you should be looking for as a founder.
Yeah. Do you like, we're in this journey now, and we've done the lowest valuation we could do to start with. I feel like it was almost too low. It's the lowest you can do on a 7-figure valuation, because after that you don't get any credibility anymore. But do you feel like there's a little bit of a culture of trying to boost the valuation to as high as possible and then get burnt, or to waive that rate? Like, what's your view on the current VC landscape?
No, I'm not a total expert. These are just observations, and I have an opinion. I feel like as founders, it's just you're bringing something to the world that hasn't existed before. Potentially, you're painting a picture, telling a story, and selling yourself and your vision. And naturally, there's a tendency to overinflate that, right? The reality is, and I think actually salespeople are one of the best litmus tests, because salespeople go and work for all these VC-backed companies, get into the CRM and go, hold on a minute, the average order value you said was 25K, but in the CRM, the last 10 deals were only 3K. This business isn't what it seems. So I do feel like, there's this just juggling act that founders, VCs, like are juggling to kind of inflate what's happening, and then you want to breathe, because it's not real yet, right? That it's based on projections. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think you've got to find the sweet spot where you set out your intention, and hopefully you get as close or you surpass that. The problem is when there's this massive gap between the intention of what you set as an expectation and you're nowhere near that. That's when it's difficult and upsetting for everyone involved. So yeah, it's where you land.
Yeah. And so as somebody who obviously has a company which gives you access to lots of different founders as well, what's the key common trait that you see in those founders who are successful more so than not?
I do think I mentioned it earlier, like telling the right story. Showing up on LinkedIn and telling that story. I think you both guys are doing a great job of that this year. Actually letting people into the journey and letting people discover the journey you're on. So you become relatable. Like, people are connected to you as much as your product, because the vision in your head of where you want your product to be, like, in its reality, may not be there. But if people come and, like you, they're on a journey with you, then they're going to buy into it and follow. So I think great founders tell a great story. They have a great vision, and as I mentioned before, like they're actually executing on that, and they're attracting other great people. So actually, let's bottom out on that. If they can't attract great people with them, it's not going to go very far.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think that the value I get from your membership is to be exposed to people who've gone through that journey before me, and they've got the scars to prove it. How do you obviously joining the membership is one way, but how do you create a network of mentors that you can rely on when you need it?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, I'm not the only option. I've just made it easy for people to build what we call circles of experts. So when you join the Sales Confidence membership, you get access to mentorship, professional coaching, peer groups, masterclasses, and other aspects. But ultimately, you could go onto LinkedIn, run a search, identify people that are 5-10 years ahead of you, reach out to them and say, this is who I am. I see that you've achieved this. I'd love to learn from you. And there's a lot of goodwill on LinkedIn as a professional network. And then it's about showing up in the right events, the right networking circles, the right dinners to expose yourself to more of the people that you want to be. And look, I've constantly, there's no guarantee as well, by the way, that by being in the right room, you will get there. But I think it's going to help you get closer to your goals if you are surrounded with more like-minded people like you.
Yeah, perfect.
So I think, but I think that's one of the difficulties, though, and this is so good when there's an enabler around you to create those conversations. So yeah, thankful for the membership. I think he's got a last final question, and then
so it's been a pleasure having you on, James. We do have a wrap-up question, which is, for your whole career to date, what is your favorite memory and why?
Wow, that is a really good question.
I feel like you gave one story away right up top, so you can't use it again.
Yeah, I had Can I say more than one?
Yeah, go for it.
So there's a personal one. My very first job in SaaS, I was working at a company called Huddle, which was a competitor to Box and Dropbox. Mm-hmm. And when I had that interview with two very successful sales leaders. I'll name check them. One's called Neil Ryland. He's a CRO now of a company called Normative. And the VP at the time was a guy called Matt Wise, who is also a very successful UK sales leader. But in that actual interview, we got to the final slide of my presentation. And in that presentation, I had a picture of my first son, Harry. And under that picture of my first son, Harry, it had a quote, "Please give my daddy a job because I need to eat." So that was a cool moment, and they did give me the job, and that's what started up my sales career in SaaS. So that's quite personal. And then another cool story, which is this is probably more of the ego, is quite amusing. Cognizant, who's one of our great partners and a great business out of the UK, I was invited to speak at one of their events, which I think was at the Natural History Museum or the Science Museum. Nice. And they said I could come up to a theme song, and not every event does this, but it is quite cool when you come out to your own theme song. And I really like the song Midas Touch, which basically says everything I touch turns to gold. So in planning for that event, I went and bought some gold Gucci's from Harrods. And when that song came on, everything I touched turns to gold. I came out of my gold Gucci's, and I binned them after that. I don't think I ever did that again. I don't know if it landed that well, but yeah, that was quite amusing.
Amazing. Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you, James.